I'm 37 years old. I live in Lynnfield, Massachusetts, just north of Boston. I'm married to my husband, Sam. We've been married for 2.5 years now. And we have 2 fur babies. My golden doodle is Jackson, who's 6 years old, and McKinley, a mini golden doodle, who's just under a year.
I don't know why. Emily is among the most caring, funny, and beautiful women that I've ever met.
I was in Vermont on a ski vacation with my family, and I remember putting on my clothes to go ski for the day and looking down at this mole that I'd had for pretty much my whole life and just thinking to myself that it just looked a little bit off. My name is Emily, and I have melanoma.
Melanoma is a cancer of the melanocytes, which are the cells in the skin that provide the pigmentation of the skin, the color of the skin.
There are 3 kinds of skin cancer, and 2 of them are very prevalent, more than 1 million cases a year, but don't kill many people. Melanoma is, on the other hand, an epidemic rising cancer, which is much more lethal.
If it's detected early, melanoma is curable essentially 100% of the time. The problem is a lot of times it is not detected early. And once it has progressed beyond the skin, into the lymph nodes, into the lungs, then it becomes deadly.
I've been practicing medicine since 2013. My specialty is neonatology. My job really entails taking care of preterm babies, so babies that are born early, and then also babies who are born on time but who are sick and need some extra support at the time of delivery. Being a physician myself, I knew kind of immediately that that was not a good sign and was pretty panicked.
A mole-like growth, which doesn't look like other moles on the body, are the hallmark of melanoma, the most reliable sign of melanoma evolving in the skin.
My dermatologist got me in immediately, and I was able to have a biopsy of that mole later that day. And that kind of began the melanoma saga for me.
Early diagnosis is critical. Obviously, picking up melanoma when it's spread to the lungs or the brain or other vital organs now is a scenario where we have treatments, but we much rather do it earlier when you can operate the melanoma in the skin.
And while I was anticipating that that was going to be the diagnosis, I just stopped. I just couldn't think, I couldn't breathe. I think that probably was hands down one of the hardest days of my life. And then from there, kind of everything happened so incredibly quickly. I had a PET scan, I had a brain MRI to check just to see the extent of the cancer. And I had surgery within a couple of weeks to both remove the primary mole where the melanoma was, and then also to remove a lymph node that I had that was positive as well. Luckily, I only had that one positive lymph node, but at least at the time, that made my melanoma stage 3.
Stage 0 is the earliest form of melanoma that has not yet invaded deep enough in the skin to reach the blood vessels or the lymphatic channels, so it cannot really go anywhere. And if you diagnose a melanoma at that stage, the cure rate is 100%. So stage 1, the survival rate is in the upper 90s. Stage 2 is in the low 90s, upper 80s. Stage 3 can vary somewhere from 30% to even 70%. And stage 4 historically has had a 5-year survival of 5% or less. But the good news is that has changed, and now with current treatments, we are actually able to likely cure half of those patients.
So biomarkers of a variety of sorts are important in melanoma, and this is an evolving story, but the biomarkers that tell us BRAF is mutated are key to the decision to be able to treat those with inhibitors of those particular genes.
So having BRAF-positive melanoma, my treatment options definitely expanded, which I felt very lucky for.
Understanding the presence of BRAF and other mutations that may occur in melanoma cannot be underestimated.
BRAF is one of the genes of what's called the MAP kinase pathways. BRAF is a mutation of one of the genes in that pathway, and when that mutation happens, the cell is always on, so it's always proliferating. When you see that in melanoma, it does two things. Number one, it allows you to separate patients into patients with BRAF and no BRAF mutations, and second, it's also a therapeutic tool because we now have drugs that can target that particular mutation and turn off that gene that's always on, and that has actually led to major improvements in the treatment of melanoma.
We learned very early on that Emily's, because she had the BRAF mutation, that this was going to be a treatable situation. We didn't know how long it could be treated for. We didn't know how successful the treatment would be, but we knew there were options.
Because my melanoma at diagnosis was so advanced, my melanoma team recommended that I do adjuvant therapy, which is therapy that's meant to help prevent recurrence of melanoma, since melanoma has such an incredibly high recurrence risk. It was a couple of pills that I took every single day for a year, and I had the ability to take those specifically because I have a BRAF-positive melanoma. I definitely maintained positivity throughout the entire year of adjuvant therapy, and I was very hopeful that it would prevent melanoma recurrence. There were so many things that I wanted to do in my life at that point. I mean, I was 32 when I was diagnosed and just kind of beginning my life, meeting my husband, thinking about having a family, and this kind of like hit me like a ton of bricks. And so I think because of that, I was really hopeful that the adjuvant therapy was going to prevent recurrence. But it was definitely a tough year, and I had a lot of side effects from the adjuvant therapy that made it really, really difficult to kind of continue on with my usual life and to work while I was being treated.
Sun exposure is healthy to some degree, but it needs to be tempered with care. It needs to be tempered with protecting yourself with sunscreen, with shade, and particularly I want to make sure that people protect their kids. Kids are the most susceptible population to be exposed to ultraviolet, and that makes them high risk for melanoma for life.
Unfortunately, in spite of our attempts to educate our patients, their families, and the society at large, I think most people still think of skin cancer as something you can deal with and it'll never bite you on the backside. But in fact, return of melanoma, and singularly return of melanoma out even 20 years after initial management, is the hallmark of this disease.
I had a lung biopsy in August of 2021, and that is when I found out that my melanoma was back in my lungs specifically, and that upgraded my melanoma from stage 3 to stage 4, or metastatic melanoma. At the time that I had my melanoma recurrence, I had another decision to make, which was what treatment I wanted to pursue next. And at that point, the things that were on the table were the same immunotherapy options that I was given the first time around. It just really felt like the right treatment for me. And so in September of 2021, I started the immunotherapy infusions, and I continued those for a year. I'd be lying if I said it was easy. It has not. It has been the exact opposite of easy. And there have been so many moments of, just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I don't think either of us thought it was going to come back so soon. I think we thought we had more time.
But I think one of the things that has really, really helped me in terms of the anxiety and the emotional burden is really trying to live my life intentionally and really, as best as I can, trying to be in the moment and just enjoying today. And every morning that I wake up and I can put my feet on the ground is a good day, regardless of how the rest of the day progresses.
That is quite the salad.
I have immense hope for the future. And I think as it relates to melanoma, right now I have no evidence of active disease, so I have some disease left in my lungs, but it's small and it doesn't seem to be growing, thanks to the immunotherapy treatment. But the reality is I have the potential for new recurrence in the future in a different organ or growth in my lungs. And I think if the last 5 to 10 years in melanoma therapy has taught us anything, it's that there's so much incredible research coming down the pipeline, and I can't even begin to imagine what treatments might look like in the next 5 to 10 years.
We've learned a huge lot about melanoma in the past decade. We expect that the next decade will be equally rewarding.
Now we're looking at even more progress. I am convinced will lead to further progress and hopefully most, if not all, patients can be eventually cured of melanoma.
I think to learn as much as you can learn about this disease is the key message. I think information is strength in combating it.
There you go. Nice job.
I hit it.
The most important thing to take away from Emily's story is that melanoma can be treated if it's found in time. Yeah! Boom! Nice job.
It makes me question my mortality all the time. There's no question about that. But I think that for me, I've found a way to live my life and to keep moving forward. And a diagnosis of melanoma doesn't prevent you from doing that. Days are hard and there are really, really difficult moments. But as you collect more and more days behind you after the diagnosis, you get more comfortable with thinking about the future again.